Please be seated. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. That sounds like a very quid pro quo arrangement with God. But there is no such thing with God. Jesus was expressing in those verses the reality of the world, which is a very quid pro quo world. You give something to me, I give you something back. We're friends. You do something bad to me, I find a way to get back at you sometime a little later. Yeah. That's the world that Jesus is not a part of, and that he claims we also are not a part of or should not be a part of. No, we've already been judged and condemned and forgiven by God. That already happened, right? Jesus came to make us right with God. We are already forgiven by God. The way to forgiveness is by wanting to mirror the abundant mercy and love and forgiveness that is constantly flowing from God. And the paragon of that in the Bible, the human paragon of that in the Bible is Joseph. I know you would expect me to say Jesus, but let's face it, he had a little special help. The rest of us are normal human beings, just like Joseph. And I encourage you to go back and read the whole passage of Joseph from the time of he and his brothers living with his father to the end of the story you hear today. I'm going to recount a little bit for you so you can understand why this man is the paragon of forgiveness and why we need to do it. Joseph, as you may remember, was one of the 12 sons of Israel renamed Jacob. Jacob loved Rachel the most, and Jacob bore him only 2 sons, Joseph and Benjamin, his favorites of his favorite wife. He had 10 others. They were wealthy as all get out, had the great lives. They worked hard. Joseph was good looking and really smart and gifted from God with wisdom. So his brothers hated him because he was a tattletale. He would tell his father when his brothers weren't doing their chores right. So, his father, as you remember, brought him the great, very multicolored coat. And only Joseph got that wonderful coat. And his brothers hated him for it. So, when he was about 17 years old, how many of you were obnoxious when you were 17? 13, 17? It's really, we were horrible, weren't we? Oh, I was horrible. Anyway, he's 17 years old, bratty little 17-year-old. And his brothers had been sent off to tend to the flocks, the many flocks that they had. And his father says to Joseph, go out to your brothers and see how they're doing and report back to me. In other words, be a tattletale. So Joseph goes. His brothers see him from afar and they say, let's kill him. And Reuben says, well, let's just throw him in a pit first so we don't have blood on our hands. And he figured he would later go back and save his brother for his father, because his father, that's Joseph, was his favorite son. Instead, what happens is some traders go by, and another brother, Judah, says, hey, I know, so we don't have his blood on our hands. Why don't we sell him into slavery, have him deported to Egypt? We'll never have to deal with him again. Then they put animal blood on Joseph's coat and return it to their father, Jacob, who's already lost his wife, and tell him, your son is dead. It gets worse. So they've now only tried to kill him, not quite tried to kill him, but sold him into slavery, then told his father a lie that he is dead, and he's sold into slavery. Okay, already having trouble trying to figure out how you're going to forgive your brothers? It gets worse. He goes to the court of the Pharaoh, and he's working for the captain of the guard, where he is falsely accused of attempted rape by the captain of the guard's wife because he wouldn't sleep with her. He's such a moral guy. Gets thrown in prison. Years. He's in prison for years. Turns out that he is talented due to a gift from God. He always claims it's God doing it. He's gifted at interpreting dreams. The Pharaoh finds out, has this weird dream about fat cows and skinny cows, and Joseph is called up from prison and interprets the dream correctly. And he says, Your dreams, Pharaoh, mean that there's going to be 7 years of fat and 7 years of lean. So what you need to do is store up now grain and food for later. And then in 7 years, when the rest of the world is in famine, you'll be sitting pretty and you'll be fine. And Pharaoh says, I give you authority over everything. Except for my name, I'm still Pharaoh. You do everything in my name. And it says that Joseph forgets his family. He gets married to the wife given to him. He has 2 children of his own, 2 boys, until now, counting the years, we're now 11 years in, because 7 years of feast and then 2 years of famine later, his family comes from their land because Jacob says to his sons, takes the money and go buy grain from Egypt. They have grain. And he sees his brothers coming. Now, I don't have time to tell you the whole book of Genesis. He has a little fun with his brothers, okay? He makes them pay back a little bit for what they did to him, but he's mainly doing it to find out if his younger brother is alive and his father's alive, and he wants them to bring Benjamin to him. He doesn't have them thrown in prison. He doesn't sell them into slavery. He doesn't say, I'm Joseph. Well, I've got bad words in my head, so I'm not going to say what Joseph might have said. But he plays games with them, and he says, I want to see that younger brother. They go back, and Jacob says, no way I'm sending back my youngest son when I've already lost my favorite son. I'm not losing my second favorite son. But they get hungry, so they send them all back. All the brothers go back. And finally, Joseph reveals himself to them. Now, what you need to know when you read this, and you do need to read this yourself, is that it says, Joseph wept, Joseph wept, Joseph wept. He cries about 7 or 8 times. The last time is the one you hear, where he says to his brothers, finally, I am your brother Joseph. And then it says he fell upon them and wept and kissed their necks. Did they weep and beg for forgiveness? No, he just forgave them. Do you see why I call him the paragon of forgiveness? That's like 13 years of suffering. No dad, no brother. They've told your father you're dead. They tried to kill you, then sold you into slavery. I mean, I can't think of many people I know would say, oh, sure, I forgive them. Okay, of course. But what Joseph says is, I see God's hand in this because I was able to help Egypt store up grain, and now you are saved. Come, bring your whole family, and you shall have abundance. Now, I might have said, you can come, but you guys are going to be in the hinterlands in a little condo while Benjamin and I are in the big palace. I'll forgive you a little bit. But he says, no, abundance upon abundance, more than you can imagine, more love, more mercy, more grace than you can imagine. Because Joseph had experienced God that way. God is so abundant, so giving of gifts, that how could Joseph do anything but? It still stuns me when I read it, like, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said, come and have all the abundance that is here for you in Goshen. But that's what he did. Now, I want to emphasize that to forgive is not to forgo. To forgive is not to forgo accountability from the one who has hurt you. You can't always get it from them, but I'll give you an example. Let's say, I know this church in San Diego, not the one I work for, thank God. The treasurer embezzled $250,000 from the church. True story. Got arrested, went to jail. And when he came out, the church welcomed him back as a member. Now, accountability would suggest you are welcomed back and we will love you, but we will not let you be on the finance committee.
He got
back on the finance committee. Accountability. Your teenager drives home drunk for the 3rd time. You forgive, and you don't let them drive the car anymore, right? You send them to AA. That's what I mean. To forgive is not to forgo. You probably have some people in public life that you would like to forgive right now, that you're really unhappy. You'd like them to stop doing what they're doing. You have to forgive them. They're going to keep doing it. And notice how Jesus says you have to forgive expecting nothing in return. That one really bothers me, expecting nothing in return. Wait, if I'm a good person, don't you have to be a good person back? It doesn't work that way. Evil people just keep going on. But did you hear the psalm we just chanted? Don't worry about the evildoers. They're going down like the dead grass. Don't worry about them. It may be 13 years down the road, but things are going to be better, just like they were for Joseph. To forgive does not mean to forgo your own self-care. If you are being abused and you have any way of escaping that abuse, by all means do so. But it says pray for your abuser. If you can get out of a toxic situation, get out. If you can get others out of a toxic situation, get out. Help them get out. You can't always do it. You don't always have the power. I want to give you an example from my own life, because I can't tell other people's stories about things they've had to forgive, of how forgiving can be self-care. So I worked for a certain company in Silicon Valley, and I was managing a team of people. We were working on a big web development project. It was a big deal at the time. And my team got so big that they hired a parallel manager to manage the other half of my team. But I love that whole team. It was like 12 people, and it was now 6 people each. That person didn't know what they were doing and didn't do a lick of work. I mean, they didn't do a thing. But what they did do was befriend a VP over in another division who was sort of related to our division, but not quite. I had stellar job reviews, kept getting promotions. My team was all happy. We'd go out for lunch. We just had a blast at work. It was the best work environment ever. And also I was exercising stock options from this company now and then, and that's how my daughter went to college. So I loved that job. But a few months after she started coming, again, doing nothing, just sitting in her office and griping about things, her team members started getting called into HR. And they'd be told, in typical Silicon Valleyese, your job is going to go away, so, take a little time, but go get another job. It's a way of like laying people off in a soft way where they can't sue you in any way, right? So take a few months to find another job. And one by one, all these people that I knew were fantastic employees who worked very hard and were a lot of fun, were gone. I yelled at her one day because I was doing all this work and she was doing nothing. So we were in some meeting and she was talking about, something. And I said, but you're not doing anything. I've got all these projects and you've got nothing. Well, that was a mistake. Because a week later, my boss, who liked me a lot, called me and said, hey, I think the writing might be on the wall. You might want to be looking for another job. So I did. I went and got another job. And that would be great if that were the end of the story. But I was consumed with hatred. We'll call her Lola, not her name. I was consumed with hatred for Lola. I mean, consumed. I was so angry. And I had a brand new job, Netflix. That was fun too. But at night, when I tried to go to bed, I couldn't sleep. I'd be up for hours tossing and turning about what she had done to all those people who had lost their jobs and how she'd made me leave my job so I didn't lose my job as well. And I didn't want anything good to happen to her. And I just couldn't get it out of my mind. So I started praying to God because I've heard this gospel before. I thought I should be forgiving her. I should be loving my enemy, but I couldn't love her and I couldn't forgive her. So I prayed to God, please God, help me forgive her. I can't, and I'm sorry, but that's where I am right now. This went on for months, losing sleep. Fast forward a little bit. That was the only year that my daughter was in Catholic school. That's another sermon. And in that year that she was in a Catholic school, they, in a church much this size, they told the kids, hey, if you go to confession before Easter, we'll let you have a Friday with no uniform. So you can just, not wear your uniform on Friday. So, of course, all the kids wanted to go to confession. Well, I hadn't gone since I was 13 when I announced to my parents, I will never do that in a dark closet again. So there I was now in my mid-30s. And they had invited all the families to like a family reconciliation service in the evening. And there we were packed in, and here was Father Bob standing here explaining reconciliation and then saying, and now we'll have communion stations. I'll be here, so-and-so will be there, so-and-so will be there. And now anybody who should like to receive the sacrament, please, get in line. So all the kids come pouring into the line. Not a single adult gets up for the sacrament of reconciliation, also known as confession. So Father Bob says, well, I'm really glad that I'm the only adult sinner in this whole church. So everyone goes, ha, ha, ha. And so some of the adults start standing up and getting in line. But I didn't get in line because you're not going to compel me. And then my daughter turns around and goes, come on, Mommy, you get grace. I'm like, what are you going to say to a fourth grader? So I said, okay, fine, I'll get grace. So I'm standing in line, and I couldn't think of anything to confess. Now, I knew there were things, but they weren't coming to me. You know what I mean? So I'm standing in line, and there's Father Bob, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have to get up there and say, my sin is I think I don't have any sins. And I get up there, and right when here's Father Bob, here I am, we're sitting down, and right when I sit down, it comes falling down into my head, almost like an elevator landing. I hate Lola. And I can't forgive her, like I've tried. So I tried to start with something light. So I said, I yelled at my daughter, and he went, we don't even confess those things. So I told him about Lola. I told him how he couldn't sleep. And he said, well, she's taken your peace. And you let her take your peace. And he said, I said, I know, but I've tried to forgive and I can't. And he said, well, Janine, forgive means giving for you. I'm like, that sounds like a, priest cliche of some sort. And then he said, I suggest you pray for her. And I remember thinking, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Didn't he just hear me say, I have been trying, I can't even muster one moment of kindness in my heart for her. But I thought, well, okay. So I said, I'll try. So I go home, night one, I prayed for her. I just said, please help Lola. It was something like that. And the night two, again, I don't know what's going on in this woman's head because she was not a very forthcoming person. So the second night I said, I wish her well. I prayed for her. And by the third night I prayed for her, and then I went to sleep, and I slept well from then on. She was gone. I let her go. I released her, but I released me. And that's what I mean. Forgiveness does not mean forgoing your own self-care. It can be the greatest gift to oneself to forgive others. And that includes people who continue to hurt you. You forgive them now. And then when they keep doing it, you don't go, I have to forgive them again. Say, no, this is the all-in-one forgiveness gift at the very beginning. You're going to keep appalling me, and I'm going to let you be you, because I'm moving on with the new me that is not going to hold you ransom on that anymore. Again, forgiveness is not a quid pro quo thing. We do it because it releases us as well as them from this bitterness and resentment. We forgive like Joseph because we're so aware of the abundant mercy and grace flowing from God, and we just want to get right in that river and do it too. It feels good to be a part of it, right? We forgive so that we can have life and have it abundantly. Amen.
You're out.